On the News Channel 5 network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. As the nation braces itself for the opening arguments next week in the impeachment trial of President Trump in the U.S. Senate, we welcome to this program this week on Inside Politics Nashville's Democratic Congressman Jim Cooper. Congressman, we always appreciate you coming on the program, so thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Pat. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Now, in terms of historical perspective, this is only the third time in the 230-plus years that we've been a nation that a president's been on trial in the Senate after the House approved 2 articles to impeach him. You voted in favor of both those articles. One is for abuse of power, the other is for obstructing Congress. Why do you feel the president needs to be removed from office?
Well, Pat, the way I see it, it's really about Russia. There are a lot of legalisms and a lot of words, but I feel that the president's been too close to Vladimir Putin, the Russian dictator, who just this week declared basically he's going to rule that country for the rest of his life.
But is there a two-thirds majority in the Senate? Nobody seems to think there's a two-thirds majority in the Republican-controlled Senate to come anywhere close to removing him from office.
Well, there isn't yet, but the evidence has really been accumulating. It's kind of amazing. Not only did this accumulate during the House impeachment hearings, but also over the last 28 days when the Speaker held back the delivery of the impeachment articles. We've learned so much, like just the Lev Parnas interview the other night was pretty amazing.
So you think her delay, Republicans call it stalling, has been a good thing to make your case stronger? Why should the Senate make the case for you? Why didn't the House make the case before you sent it to the Senate?
Well, remember, impeachment is just the accusation, it's the charge. The trial is always in the Senate. And every trial has witnesses. Every trial, you know, the Chief Justice swore in the senators and asked that they swear on the Bible under oath that they be impartial. Because every senator now is supposed to keep an open mind and look for the truth.
But you have senators on both sides of the aisle who've already more or less said they've made up their mind. Should anybody really believe they mean that oath?
Well, it's a curious situation because unlike a trial here in Nashville where you get a jury pool and then select the folks who are unbiased, probably every single senator is biased one way or the other. The question is whether they're able to set aside that bias once they confront the new evidence. And I hope and pray our senators can do that.
Now, Mitch McConnell, who's been trying to put together the rules in the Senate makes up the rules after the House comes and brings up the articles of impeachment. He says it's up to the Senate to do that. And then when they did the last one for President Clinton back 20 years ago, they didn't allow witnesses for that. So why not do that again? Why not have the same rules that we had the last time for a president of another party?
Well, in the Clinton impeachment and the Clinton trial, they did have videotaped depositions. So the Senate should at least allow that. You don't necessarily have to have a live witness in the well of the Senate. But the Senate rules won't be decided by Mitch McConnell. They'll be decided by a majority of the Senate. And if 4 Republican senators, only 4, were to split from the Mitch McConnell and vote with the Democrats, you could have basically Democrat set rules for the Senate impeachment trial.
If that happens, what changes will be made in the rules? It already appears there's not going to be immediate dismissal. There was a lot of talk, including from Mitch McConnell, that they just come in and have an immediate dismissal, but that doesn't appear to be in the rules even he's going to bring up.
Well, you're right. Dismissal seems to be out of the question now. It's still likely there will be an acquittal, but first we've got to see the evidence. And for example, John Bolton has publicly indicated he wants to testify. We know he has direct information about the president, first-hand information. And by the way, it's my understanding that John Bolton was cited here in Nashville over Christmas holidays at Target. I don't know if you saw that. But
Which one?
On White Bridge Road, visiting a relative down here. But anyway, it's not just John Bolton, it's Mick Mulvaney. It's several other key administration witnesses who've been stonewalled. Don McGahn, the president's own lawyer, should testify. And, you know, if the Republicans want their witnesses too, that would be fair. Let's have witnesses, let's have evidence, let's find the truth.
You think the Biden should testify? You think the whistleblower should testify? You think that some of the members in the House who have been pushing the impeachment, these are the people that are on the president's list he wants to have in the docket?
Well, I think what's fair is that both sides should be able to call the witnesses that they choose. And if Democrats are able to call some witnesses, then the Republicans should be able to call witnesses. Because the key point is here, let's be unbiased, let's find the truth. That's what the senators swore an oath the other day to do.
How long is this going to last? I think everybody thinks 2 weeks at least, just if there are no witnesses. If we start to get into witnesses, how long could this go on?
Well, you're right. The minimum is 2 weeks because the way they do it, it's 24 hours each side, but the Senate works about 6 hours a day. and they'll probably start about midday.
And they're doing it 6 days a week.
Yeah.
They're going to be in session to do this even on Saturdays.
But there's paperwork, there are issues. I think it's a minimum of 2 weeks. With witnesses, it could be longer. But the Senate will first have to take a vote on whether to call witnesses, whether live or by videotape.
And that'll be the 51-47. They got to get 4 Republicans to come over to do that.
Simple majority vote, 51-49, unlike most Senate votes, which have to be 60 to overcome a filibuster.
Now, one of the people that seems to be moving in the area of being open to witnesses is Tennessee Senator Lamar Alexander. He's one of the few senators that's been very circumspect about what he was going to do. Have you talked to him? Why is he sort of going in the direction he's going? Because he's obviously getting a lot of heat.
Well, I certainly can't speak for the senator, but remember, he's not just a typical senator. He is a very distinguished senator, and most people view him as a statesman. He's tried over the last several years, even in a partisan environment, to get stuff done, to get good stuff done for people back home by working cooperatively, not only with Republicans, but with Democrats. So with that spirit, and there are a few others like him, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Mitt Romney of Utah. These are considered the moderates, but there are many more like them who want to do the right thing for the country.
This trade witness for witness seems to be coming from Ted Cruz. That's from a totally different part of the Republican caucus. What does it mean that you have a conservative like that at least talking about having a deal like that?
It's been very interesting recently, Pat, because you keep up with politics better than anybody, but we've seen some of these ultra right-wing folks break with the president on national security issues. And remember, I really view this as fundamentally a national security issue here, because it's really about Russia and being too close to Russia. But on recent votes with war powers in Iran, you saw Mike Lee publicly declare he had received the worst briefing in his Senate career from the administration. You saw Rand Paul back him up. Now you're seeing Ted Cruz. There are other national security senators who are saying, hey, the president's out of control here. We got to do something about it.
Reflecting back on the House process of going through to get to where we are today in terms of these articles of impeachment, the idea of being too close to Russia was not talked about occasionally, but certainly was not a focal point of this whole thing. Do you think for some reason the managers, when they get over to the Senate, are somehow going to pivot? And how do they do that based on the evidence they've put together?
Well, if you read the documents closely, you understand that the $391 million that was supposed to go to Ukraine in foreign aid, this wasn't foreign aid to buy tractors and seeds. This was foreign aid to buy Javelin anti-tank missiles because Russian tanks were invading Ukraine, trying to take over that whole country the way they did Crimea. Already 13,000 Ukrainians have died in this war because it's a real war. Putin sent over what's called little green men to infiltrate the country, but they were really special operations soldiers. And remember, that airplane was shot down by Russian anti-aircraft weapons, and a lot of folks died in the plane going from Holland to Malaysia. This is outright war going on, and the Ukrainians were desperate for help. The president held up that help really for his own petty political reasons. When our allies need help, we should be helping them.
Nashville Congressman Jim Cooper is our guest on Inside Politics. We're talking about the upcoming impeachment trial in Washington, which begins in earnest next week. We'll talk about other issues as well in Washington.